now, and then we'll jump right in. This webinar is being recorded, and a link will be distributed to everyone later this afternoon via email, so keep an eye out for that. I also did want to call your attention to the Gotowebinar control panel. There's a questions box on your right-hand side. We'd love to hear from you during today's presentation, so feel free to drop in any questions you have into that box right there, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the presentation, and we'll also have a dedicated time for questions and answers at the end. If you'd like to familiarize yourself with that option now, just say a quick hello, drop in where you're calling in from. That would be great. All right, got a couple people answering there. Hello, David and Jim. All right, since we're running a few minutes behind, we'll go ahead and jump in. We've got a quick poll question for you guys today. Just want to get an understanding if anyone on the call here is currently using Leap. So you should see a poll pop up here on your screen in just a moment. All right, we'll let that run for just a second. All right. Last couple of seconds here for responses. All right, fantastic. Thanks everybody for your responses on that. All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move into some introductions today. Joining us on the call, we'll have Tom Bash. Tom is the Strategic Partnerships Manager here at Leap, and he's going to be joining us as one of our moderators today. Tom is a veteran of the roofing industry. He's got about 20 years of experience under his belt, and he uses that here at Leap to help contractors to improve on their margins and to grow by utilizing technology. So Tom's going to give us a quick intro to the Leap platform and welcome the rest of our speakers today. Welcome, Tom.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate that, Kelly. Gosh, I feel old with 20 years of experience. I don't know if I like that intro. Yeah, anyways, appreciate you all joining us. I'll keep it super high level, because we're going to have Steve here give us a deep dive into Leap. But essentially, Leap is a digital point of sale application that's helping contractors sell more efficiently in the home and in today's scenario remotely. So everything that Steve is going to present to you today, you'll have a good idea of how it works in a remote environment as well. So I'm not going to steal too much of Steve's thunder. I'll let him dive into more of that. But we also are joined by Heather. Heather, help me out with your last name.
Can't hear you, Heather.
I think you're muted.
There you go.
It's okay. It's A-Day. Heather A-Day.
Heather A-Day. Okay, great. I should have asked you that earlier. So
No
I appreciate that. Heather joined us as the marketing director at Excavations. Excavations is a fantastic user of Leap, but they're also one of the top 5, top 10 hardy contractors in the country. So we're honored to have Heather joining us today. Heather, maybe you can introduce yourself and the company a little bit more for us.
Absolutely. So I have the sincere honor of serving Excavations now, gosh, as a full-time marketing director for 5 years, but I've been with the company almost since the very beginning when I had my own marketing firm. And the company it's 25 years old, and we are one of the largest replacement contractors in the Southeast. So all exterior work and siding is definitely, James Hardie siding is definitely one of our main services that we offer, in addition to anything from replacement windows and full exterior facelifts, where we actually have an in-house architectural designer who can show people what their home could look like with some possibilities, and then we go and do the actual construction after that.
That's awesome. Appreciate that. Before we get started on this, I just want to ask you a couple questions. When did you start using Leap, and maybe how did you hear about Leap? And maybe if you can, at a very high level, what made you want to start using Leap?
Well, the How we actually heard about LEAP was the CEO of Exovations is in a peer group with 20 other top remodelers in the country, and so they often share ideas of tools and processes and things that help their businesses grow. And one of the members in this team had just signed on with you guys, and it was new to the entire group. So Rune, who's the owner of Exovations, came back and he said, Heather, I've got something I want you to look into. And so after looking into the options, it was LEAP and one-click contractor. And after doing a very thorough review of each, it was very evident to us why LEAP was the solution for us versus the one-click contractor. As far as why we needed it, probably like most of the people listening, I would say just a very antiquated way of quoting. And it was a bear to keep updated. And it was also very cumbersome for our sales teams to be able to present, first of all, to quote, and then to present something that looked professional, that they could also produce in a timely manner. Now, we're not one call close as from a concept standpoint, but we also couldn't in most situations because of how cumbersome it was for us to actually quote with our former quoting system. So LEAP allowed us to be able to more quickly produce quotes. And even though, like I said, we're not one call close strategy, sure, we can now present in that first meeting, and should our customer be ready to buy, we are ready to sell. So that's a little bit about how we learned about it, why we needed it, and it's been about 1.5 years now since we made that decision. We've been up live since September, and now we can talk about this at some point later about how it's become particularly important with the COVID-19.
Yeah, absolutely appreciate that. I look forward to hearing that as we go through the rest of the demo and stuff, and love to kind of get your take on things as Steve's going through it. So we'll interject here and there, and love to continue to kind of share that story and how you use it.
Right.
So with that being said, I want to introduce Steve so he can show us all the bells and whistles of this great software. Steve's been working on this. I like to call this his baby. He's been working on this for a long time. Steve was a sales rep before, and realized the process was quite antiquated and very numerous in steps and processes that could be automated, if you will. And so created LEAP. And I don't want to steal much of his thunder, but Steve's going to show us a lot of great stuff. Steve's our founder and chief technology officer here at LEAP. So with that, I'll hand it over to Steve, and look forward to having an interactive demo here.
Great. Can you hear me? Just to make sure. Right?
Can hear you
Yeah.
great.
All right, good. So I first just want to start by just explaining a little bit more, elaborate on that story. I actually like to start every demo off with kind of how LEAP came about. I think it's important. So to piggyback off what Tom was saying, I actually did in-home sales, selling exterior remodeling for a company out of the Baltimore, Maryland area for a little over 7 years. I was a very successful sales rep there. Right out of the gate, I started selling, and then I became one of the more senior reps. And I was probably the most tenured rep there, and I had constant ride-alongs from other sales reps where I would train them. After about literally maybe my first 3 to 6 months in of doing everything with carbon copy contracts and a 3-ring binder that had all of my price guide in it, a separate 3-ring binder that had my pitch book in it, a separate 3-ring binder that had all of my contracts and measure sheets and credit application forms, plus all the brochures and everything that went along with selling it, and then my sales kit. When I would walk up to people's houses to pitch a lead, sometimes I felt like I was moving in. I had so many like briefcases and suitcase and demo kits. So I also love technology. So I was very good at sales. That's what paid the bills, but I love technology. I bought the iPad 2 like as soon as it came out. It was actually my first Apple product. And for a while doing in-home sales, I was using an Excel spreadsheet. So early on, I was running leads using all the manual paper methods, and I built an Excel spreadsheet that basically allowed me to quickly calculate a price. It also calculated a monthly payment for the different lenders that I was able to offer, and of course, it calculated my commission once I typed in a total sale amount. And I made sure that as I was pitching, I typed in how much I could sell it for, and it would update my commission. And I used that for about 1.5 years until I got my iPad. When I got the iPad, I wanted to put the spreadsheet on the iPad, but Microsoft Office didn't exist at that time on the iPad. So the spreadsheet that I was using on a big clunky laptop was just not compatible with my iPad. And I took up computer programming as a hobby just to kill time, especially in the slow season. Like in the winter with exterior modeling, it just gets super dead, and I just had a lot of free time. And I would just tinker with computer programming. And I really had no intentions initially, but once I got to the point where I knew how to do computer programming and learned enough to actually make an app, I decided to replace the functionality of my spreadsheet in my iPad. And after a couple months, I eventually had it to a point that I could use it in my day-to-day in a real-world sales rep, real-world estimates. And initially, all I did was create estimates. It would just, I type in my measurements and it would calculate a price. And then I would go back to doing everything the manual method. I would do my pitch book and everything manual. And as time went on and all the different pain points that I was coming across as a sales rep, making all the mistakes and all the inefficiencies that a sales rep makes day to day, I was keeping a little tally, a little notepad of all the different things that I would like an app to do to make my life easier, to make me more efficient and more professional as a sales rep. And I would just, when I had time, I just started adding things to it. I added a way to do my presentation. I added a way to do the financing. I added a way to calculate good, better, best options. I added a way to write up the contract and sign it. And literally since then, I mean, it has never stopped of adding features. We do updates sometimes weekly, definitely monthly. We do updates to the app and just make it better and better, not just from ideas from now myself. Obviously, I'm not doing in-home sales anymore, but from our customers now. They are giving us constant feedback and input. Our team is giving us constant feedback and input. And in closing, the reason I always like to start every demo off with that is because this is a software that was built by the end user who knows what the sales reps want, who knows what the sales rep needs, who actually been in real world scenarios, sitting across that kitchen table from Mr. and Mrs. Jones, making all the mistakes and inefficiencies that a sales rep does. So with that, I'm going to share my iPad screen, and hopefully we don't have any technical difficulties, but I'm going to share my iPad screen, and I'm going to go through a live demo as if I was a sales rep in the house. Some of this stuff for time's sakes I have preloaded, so I'm just going to kind of breeze through this. Tom, if you can just keep an eye on the time to make sure I'm not going over, I would like to leave some room for Q&A. And I do talk kind of fast, so if I'm going too fast, just interrupt me and tell me to slow down a little bit. So what you're viewing here, just to confirm, Tom, can you see my iPad screen?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, good. So just to show you what's going on here, left-hand side is our main menu. That's kind of like a sales rep, the things that they're going to go through throughout their sales process. I'm going to touch into a bunch of these on this webinar. The estimate screen, which you're seeing now, is where kind of everything is created. Think of this as your sales rep's measure sheet. So he has usually a measure sheet for each type of product. Like I had one for siding, I had one for roofing, one for windows, one for doors, and you basically just go through and gather all of your measurements. So this is basically going to replace that measure sheet or workup sheet, we used to call it. The first thing is adding a customer. That's kind of where everything starts on a sales rep. You get a customer's name and address and an appointment time that you have to be there. Usually this lives in a CRM. Sometimes people just use it into a calendar. Sometimes you just get it in a text message or an email. We integrate with a bunch of the popular CRMs that are out there. I'm not going to go over each one of them. If you have questions or whatever, we can reach out to you directly and tell you if we integrate directly with the one that you use. I think we integrate 4 or 5 of them. But we can have all the customer information just populate in here. So you put the name, address, phone number, email, etc. And what's nice is once the customer's information is in here, you never have to type it in again. So it will carry through all the proposals, all the contracts, all the credit applications, the lead results, all of that customer information will carry over through all the different documents that your sales rep's going to create. I have preloaded some roofing measurements in here just so we have some products to work with. And so you see here, you just have a bunch of different line items. These are completely customizable. I went in and filled in some measurements. I'm going to do a live demo with some siding, and I'm actually going to fill my siding measurements in with an app called Hover. So if you're not using it, I believe a bunch of people in here are probably are familiar with the Hover platform. But when I click into siding, I can click into tools, and instead of going around and measuring the house, I can just click on Hover. I'm going to do a naked search here, but you can obviously search for the customer's address. I have a bunch of demo hovers that are in here. I'm just going to select this one. And you can map all of the measurements to just auto-populate all the siding, insulation, the tear off, all the widgets, pretty much anything that's on a Hover report, you can have auto-populate to this. You can also have the rep go in and type in individual measurements. So I say like 5 or whoops, whatever. I'm gonna do a 3 on this one. And you can also have like different upcharges. So if I click on this little arrow, you can, if you have maybe like a premium color upcharge, you can flip that thing on. And then I click done. And now I have different series or options, so I'm going to say a good, better, best that you can choose from. And you see the app is calculating, I have a retail price up in the corner of each category. So I got my roofing, my windows, and my siding. Down at the very bottom, it is updating a price. I have here retail is $71,252. Now I'll give you a real world scenario. You have a homeowner, you're sitting across the table from them, and what Heather had mentioned about doing like one call closes, like part of the reason that the companies can't do a one call close is if the customer wants a bunch of different mix and match options and a price on the higher end roof and the middle of the road siding, but do the sunroom in this color and this style and blah, blah, blah. Like that takes time to calculate all of that. So as a sales rep, if I'm sitting across the table from Mr. and Mrs. Jones, I want to keep them engaged on like closing the deal and overcoming objections. I didn't want to have to say, give me a minute to work up the price, or give me a second to reconfigure that, because that's a second or minute that Mr. and Mrs. Jones leaves the kitchen table, and then their engagement in the entire sales process was just lost. So now I have to sell them to come back to the kitchen table to close that deal. So Leap allowed me to where Mrs. Jones says, hey, give me a price on the top of the line roofing. I could just swipe that over. The lower end windows, I swipe that over to the lower end, and then with all 3 styles of siding. So I say, okay, well, if you do the top of the line siding, it's $76,315. If you do a middle of the road one, it's $72,229. I'm reading the number off the bottom. And then if I do the lower end, it's $63,971. And the customer says, okay, well, I like the one in the middle. That kind of fits. It's the Goldilocks for me. It's not the most expensive, not the cheapest. It's just right. What's the best price you can do on that? As a sales rep, I had different margins that I was allowed to discount to. So, this is kind of my retail, my 1-year price, starting price, whatever you want to call it. If I click on that button, I have pre-programmed price drops in the app so that I know, hey, well, this is the summer promotion that's on right now, or the winter promotion, or the COVID-19 promotion, or whatever you're running, right? So this is my 58,506. And then maybe you wanted to put another number in there that your rep, maybe it's cost, or a number that there's a rock bottom minimum or floor price that they're not allowed to drop below. You can have as many of these discounts as you want. We have some companies that put them in like 5% increments all the way down to the lowest price that the sales rep is allowed to sell it. And then if I go up and change these, all of that number down at the bottom is also updating to reflect those changes. So what this allowed me to do as a sales rep is enter the measurements one time. That's kind of where every estimate starts, is by gathering the measurements. So I can enter them into the software one time and then have the software figure out all the mix and match options and do all the math for me. If the customer wanted to say, hey, let's hold off on the windows all together and just give me a price on the roofing and siding, I just toggle off the windows. I'm not removing them off the estimate, because I might come back to that later on in the sales presentation, or even rehash the job, a couple months or even a year down the road, and I won't have to remeasure those windows anymore because I already have them saved in the estimator. We also incorporate financing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but if I wanted to calculate a monthly payment for the homeowner, I could type in an amount that I'm looking to get financed and have the app do all the math for me on not only how much the monthly payment is to the homeowner, but also how much the lender is going to charge me, the sales rep or the contractor, to do that specific deal. It works with any lender that you offer. All you need is a payment multiplier in the fee that goes with the loan. And you can even, if you wish, make it where when your sales rep selects a plan, it builds the cost of the financing into the discounts, so that if the maximum discount your sales rep is allowed to offer is say 20%, but they want to offer a 5%, a financing option that costs 5% off the top, well, then the app will do the math and say, okay, well, if you're going to offer that finance option with a maximum of 20% discount, here's your total price, including the financing fee, and it will bring you a total discount of the 20%. I hope that makes sense. So that's calculating. Tom, I don't know if you wanted me to stop here, if there's any questions or anything you wanted me to go over, or you just want me to just breeze right into resources?
No, I think this is great, really helpful. Heather, I don't know. I know that you guys are real familiar with this too. Is there anything in there that you use specifically, or that's really helpful for your team?
Absolutely. I would just say that one of the things that for us is a real benefit is because it was so difficult to quote, we basically would go in with one option for everything. Versus having what LEAP presents is, okay, here's kind of a good, better, best. So, we would just quote what we thought would be the thing that we could sell. And then you're kind of left, flat-footed if they say no. Then you're back to maybe we're discounting because, at that moment, it's very difficult to go back and kind of resell different products. What we love about LEAP is it not only very quickly allows us to get multiple prices for different options, but more importantly, it allows the consumer to now be in that role of self-selection. So no longer is it our sales consultant who's deciding this is the product I think I can sell, and I'm not suggesting that all our sales consultants sell that way. But there are definitely some who are going to say, what's the path of least resistance? That's the one I'm going to present. LEAP actually allows us to present whether you call it a good, better, best, or it's a totally different more designer type products. These are some products that would never have been presented before LEAP, but now they are. And in the James Hardy world, I can tell you that beyond what we see here with the Cedar Mill and Smooth, you've got Artisan, which is a very high-end designer product, plus you have the pre-finished Color Plus products. Those are products that we sell, but rarely presented before LEAP. So that's the thing that excites me most from the marketing and sales standpoint is we're now presenting value-added services that sometimes our consumer will actually say, hey, I want to learn more about that just because we offered it.
Yeah,
Cool.
That's great. I think that's really helpful. Appreciate it.
All right, so next thing I'm going to do is jump into our resources section. So this really piggybacks off of the estimate, right? Because at some point the sales rep is going to have to demo the products, and especially in this day and age, right? Where we have a lot of companies who are trying to sell remote because we're having this whole virus thing. And if I go to my resources section, this is where I can house all of my brochures, my warranty information, my colors, product selections, etc. The app recognized that I linked the hover to populate all of those siding measurements. And if you notice, there's two hover icons here. So as a sales rep, when I'm in the house pitching with Mr. and Mrs. Jones, a lot of times I had a measure wheel and I would run around the house and measure the house with a measure wheel. Sometimes I use a tape measure. And then I would calculate the price, and then there's a human error element there, not only with the sales rep to make a mistake, especially if they're new. Sales reps are not experienced in measuring exterior modeling. You have the issue of them making a mistake and then misquoting the price both over and under what it's supposed to be, as well as kind of a credibility with the homeowner on, if a guy comes out and he's just walking around the house, he's measuring it. I used to always get a question why I didn't carry a ladder with my, with me when I would do the measurements. So when I would integrate, say, a hover, if I click into that, this would bring in the actual hover report of that homeowner's house. So now I can go through and say, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, here's how we gathered your measurements. Some of you might be familiar with it. This webinar isn't for a hover demo, but you can see how I can go through it and just really add a sense of credibility to the prices that I'm about to present to them. This is how I came up with the price. This is your house, and it really separated me from the competition. If I close this out, it's also the second icon when I click in, can take it a step further and we can import the 3D model. So again, the app recognized that we linked it, it auto-populated the measurements, did the good, better, best pricing, showed the brochure. Now I can use the 3D model and go through this whole entire design process with the Hover app and build the house the way that the customer wants. Once they decide on the way that they want it, I flip back to the estimate screen, make the selections and hit done. And now I have a whole estimate already calculated for that in seconds. So you can also house videos like here, I think I have one in my roofing section. So if you go here, you click on, you can have a video load that you can present you know, what we did when I did in home sales is we had a video that was like what to expect during your installation or what to expect after the contract is signed, because this is usually a project that homeowners do a few far and in between. So it's like a foreign buying process to them. And it's also one of the only things that you have to give money to upfront and then wait sometimes weeks before anything even gets installed. So we had a video that hey, you know, this is what to expect after you sign the contract. And it was, I had customer testimonial videos in it. It had a little bit of like what their front yard was going to look like when the thing was going to be installed. And it just added a little bit, created a little bit more value. You know, I wasn't the cheapest when I did in home sales. So it added a little bit more value, a little bit more peace of mind to the homeowner when I was selling those deals. You can also put all your brochures in here. So I can just scroll through with the homeowner, have all these at my fingertips. Heather had mentioned before with this webinar when doing just a tech check that she likes, you can put little tabs. And if you have like a really big catalog that could be even hundreds of pages, you can put little tabs down here at the bottom that the rep can just click through and flip to the exact product that the customer's interested in seeing. So no more fumbling or flipping through brochures. It just keeps them nice and organized. You can have links to different websites. We have companies who use this for lead capture forms. So if you're sitting with a homeowner and they have a friend or family member who might be interested in the same types of products, you can have a resource inside of here that the rep clicks into and just submits that lead and have it tied directly into the home office, however your leads come in from your website. I'm going to jump now into financing. I know I said I wasn't going to spend too much time on it, but I do just want to show you guys we integrate with various lenders so that you can take all the information that's filled out currently on the estimate side and have that auto-populate to different credit applications. So when you click into one, you can have like the name, the address, the email, etc., populate to a credit app. And once you fill in all the missing information, you can submit it directly to a lender that we're integrated with. And if you wanted to have it upload back to the home office, say for maybe submitting to a lender that we're not directly integrated with, we can also generate a PDF that is emailed back to the home office, password protected. So say a finance manager or someone at the home office can then use that credit application to submit to other lenders. And then what I'm going to do is jump into probably the most powerful part of the Leap app, and that's going to be our documents engine. So I'm going to show it to you in a contract, but you can use this for proposals. You can use this for generate work orders or order forms that you can send directly to your supplier. We have companies who use it for surveys so that they, you know, so like when I used to do in-home sales, one of the first things I did was ask the customer, like, how long you lived here? How old is the house? How long you been doing this project? Just questions, one, to build rapport, but also it would help with rehash opportunities. When you would call the customer and the house is a certain age or they are looking to do it by a certain time, you can just gather a lot more information with these forms. Everything I'm showing you is completely customizable. It's so hard, especially in a webinar setting, to show you how you know, how powerful these documents are. So I would encourage you after this webinar to reach out to one of our reps that will do a one-on-one demo and kind of do a deep dive of exactly how these things can be customized. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a couple different options. One is I'm going to do a roofing, I'll do siding, and I'll do windows. And I'm also going to select a payment page. Now you would also add your terms and conditions to this. You could add some lead testing forms. You could add your notice of cancellations, etc. You can even add the hover report. The application recognizes that you link the hover, so you can add that as part of your proposal or contract if you wish. Once you hit next, the 4 documents that I selected are little icons down here at the bottom, and it provides the rep with 4 forms to fill out. I just want to give you a little backstory of how this came about, going back to my sales reps days and how, you know, why I think it's important that this software is built by the end user. I'll give you a real world scenario that happened when I was selling roofing. I went into a community that was a townhouse community, and I knew right away that there was a homeowners association in that community because I could tell all the houses are nice, all the roofs were the same color, they were the same style, etc. Anytime I would go in those types of communities, I would look at that and observe it. And when I would pitch those leads, I would only pitch the types of products that I knew the homeowner could get installed. There was no sense in pitching a roof or siding of a style or color that I couldn't sell, because if the customer decided on it, well, what am I going to do? So I would pitch, let's just use a 3-tab shingle. If you're not familiar with it, it's just a basic roof system. I would pitch a 3-tab shingle, and we'll go through and say, hey, you know, it has this and that, and this underlayment and this ridge vent, blah, 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 blah. And then the homeowner say, okay, that sounds great, let's do it. And I knew that I could get that approved through the HOA. when I would get to my contract, even if you're using like an editable PDF, at the time I was using carbon copy contracts, but even if you're using a digital PDF that you're filling out contracts, most of the time you have a one-size-fits-all document, and you have fields on there that where the sales rep fills in the color, the style, they'll check yes included, no not included. Some things are marked NA or scratched out. If you're not selling skylights or windows or anything like that, like sometimes there are like X's and stuff through the contract. And on this particular instance, the customers started going through the contract with a fine-tooth comb, and they started asking about the things that were marked no, not included, NA, or scratched out. And then I was like, oh, well, no, you can't get that style of shingle because, you know, your HOA. And then, of course, that homeowner was a member of the HOA, and they swear that they can get it approved. And I'm like, well, no, you can't, because every other one in the community has the same style and color. So this is the exact roof you have to get. And ended up losing the entire deal. So because the customer just wanted to run it through the HOA to make sure. So then I left out of the house. The worst possible time was when I was literally done writing the contract. So I put on my little notepad, hey, I need a way. And it took me a little bit. Actually, I was coming back from a family vacation from Myrtle Beach, and I kind of had an epiphany. I was like, what we need, the reason that contractors have a one-size-fits-all contract is so that they don't forget anything. And when it comes to time production, when you're ordering the job, there, yes, this is included. No, this is not included. It's clear as day when it comes time to order the job. But when you're presenting it to the homeowner, like you don't really need information that is irrelevant. And I used to always compare this. Imagine going to buy a car or a truck, right? Imagine go buy a truck, and when you're sitting down doing the paperwork, the salesman says, look, this truck, you're not getting the tow package, and you're not getting the upgraded wheels, and you're not getting the undercoat, and it does not come with the leather. They never do that. It's always on the sticker. It's everything that you are getting, and that's kind of in sales. I always say keep the yeses flowing. And what I was like, what I need is a way to present the sales rep with a view that has every possible option and prevents them from making a mistake. However, when the contract is actually created, the PDF document is generated, I need it to be tailor fit to that specific project. So only the information that is relevant to the project is printed on the document. And this is kind of what we came up with. The view that you're looking at now is a form. You'll notice this is not a PDF. Matter of fact, it's interactive with logic. And as I go through and fill in different styles, you'll notice that my colors will change to match the style. So you can do this like with the James Hardy siding. With whatever style they pick, the color options change to only match that style. You can do this with anything. Your terms and conditions can change based on inputs. Your initial capture spots can change based on inputs. We have people like if an electrician is involved, you need a whole disclosure document that printed on it about getting an electrician, and a permit needs to be filed, and blah, 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 blah. If there is no electrician involved and the sales rep turns say that switch off, all that information gets removed off the contract when it gets generated. The app again recognized that we linked the hover, so I went ahead and pulled all the photos that were used to generate the hover report as part of the contract. And in this case, the contract could be a proposal. And then you can like talk into the iPad or type, of course, and I could say, replace all trim pictured. And then maybe you want to do a sketch, like in this case, I don't know, let's say we're doing a roof, and I want to mark where the downspouts are being installed. So I'm going to put little X's on the corners of the house where the downspouts are. Then I go to my siding. A lot of the stuff can be auto-populated from the estimate side. So here we go here, and this and this. Vinyl, primary siding color. This will be main house and attached garage. Detached shed. Detached in. That's not good. Detached shed. There you go.
I'm sitting here talking to myself on mute. Steve, while you're filling some of that, I just wanted to ask Heather, how because this is so customizable, I mean, how does it look on your end with the sales reps, and what's their feedback on ease of use?
So for the contracts, well, one thing that Steve was mentioning that we use heavily is the ability to, while he was talking about having things not show up on the contract that you don't select, you can also have things not show up on the contract that you do select that also have a price. For example, we don't necessarily want to advertise that we have like a minimum carpentry or a minimum paint. How can you possibly make that look okay on a contract, right? So those are items that the sales rep will go through and select, and they do get costed to the job. However, we can actually go in and say, we don't want that one to show up as a line item, but we do want the price to carry through. So we love that. We also love that it is truly as customizable as you want it to be in terms of how much description you want to have in it, how much, what you call everything, what you title everything. So, it's a blessing and a curse because, you do have to create all of that. But I would say for a lot of people, their concern for LEAP could be it's too, it's too structured, it's too boxed, it won't fit the way we do our business practice. And I would say that actually the opposite is true. It will allow you to put in whatever you need to put in for your contracts. Look and feel maybe a little different than what you have now, but as far as what you get on an efficiency side, I've just really enjoyed it. You asked me about how reps are taking to the contracts.
Yeah.
I would say that that's an area that we are still growing in, is improving our LEAP contracts. Right now, they work, they're efficient, they have the information, but I basically have a project specification that's an open field that they will just put in all kinds of description, and they use just a Word document and cut and paste that into it, and that solves that need for now until we create a little bit more of those, I guess, commonly used descriptions.
Right, and the
Yeah, I think
beauty
that's great.
Yeah, when you do that, like you can go on the website and you can add those things. That's another key point. Like you can go in and add those things, and then your rep could literally be sitting at the kitchen table getting ready to write a contract, and those updates will be on that very next contract. I actually have a real world example that I'm in Maryland, and I don't know, it was a couple years ago. Maryland went from a 3-day right to cancel to a 5 and 7 day, depending on the customer's age. If the customer is 65 or over, it's 7 days. If they're under 65, it's 5 days. And they gave us, it was literally less than a 2-week notice, I think. It might have been in 10 days that all companies in the state of Maryland had to update their contracts and adopt that notice of cancellation. We were already on LEAP, and we literally just went in, made a couple of changes, hit done, and the day that they sent out that memo with the new language that had to be on notice of cancellation, all of our sales reps throughout the entire company had that notice of cancellation already updated. Where other companies, they had carbon copy contracts that they know how to throw in the trash and have brand new ones created because they had the wrong language on it. All right, so I'm going to jump into the last section and then show you kind of the end result. I paused on the payment details section because this was another huge pain point in the industry of capturing payment methods, specifically credit cards, and doing it in a secure way. There's this thing called Pci Compliance, which is a personal card information, I think it stands for, which is basically anywhere you store a credit card number, it has to be PCI compliant, which is just a security thing. So one of our COO actually, when we hired him on, he came from the payments world, payment space and software and credit cards. And when he's seen how credit cards are being put, just written on the contracts, whether they're handwritten or just typed in, he almost had an aneurysm. He's like, oh my God, because he comes from that industry. And so he's like, we have got to figure this out. Like, we have got to figure out a way. And we did some research and worked with a company that does, it's called tokenization and vaulting of payment methods. So what happens is when I go in here and I say the customer is paying $15,000 in cash with a $5,000 deposit today, actually, in this case, all I want my sales rep just to capture the credit card, because when we did in-home sales, and a lot of companies I think adopt this, is they usually wait the 3-day right to cancel before they actually run the deposit. So they want the sales rep to capture the card and make sure it is indeed a good credit card account. So I can go in here, select credit card, and then the app will pop up with a little box like this where I can type in the credit card's name, and I can put in like John Doe, put in the credit card number. You can actually use the camera, the iPad to scan it, but I want to use this fake card because I know it will work. And I put this in, 22222. And when I hit done, what it does is it'll take this credit card information and it sends it to a third party encrypted. It's PCI level 1 compliant, which is equivalent to a bank. And just like that, my credit card number is gone. Me as a sales rep don't know it anymore. The customer don't have to worry about it leaking anywhere. It does not go to a CRM. It doesn't go anywhere. The technology that we have will actually take that credit card, send it to that third party. They store it and give us a token. And then we have built integrations with close to 100 different credit card processors that can use the token to run the credit card transactions. So now even the business owner, your office manager, your finance manager will not know what the customer's credit card is. They will only know the last 4 digits of the credit card number. We can also do the same thing with checks. And this is skyrocketed in use in the last 6 weeks with the whole COVID-19, working from home, doing remote sales, because if the customer wants to pay with a check, I have to now drive out to their house and get that check, or at least wait for them and they're going to say the check's in the mail, and everybody knows that quote and what that means. So this would allow me to put the account number in, the customer's check account number, routing number, and then you choose, I think, if it's checking or savings and if it's personal or business, and then we can run ACH transactions the same way that you run credit card transactions. We also, I'm showing you it in the app as if I'm a sales rep doing it. We also have a way that you can send the customer a payment request. So if they want to pay the completion, say the sales rep captures it this way for the deposit, but they want to pay the completion with a different credit card, you can send them a payment request, and it was an email that they will get with a link, and they click that link, it will take them to a form that has your company logo in it, and an amount that you're asking for, and they can type in their bank account or credit card information securely, and it will use the same tokenization process. Somebody at the home office would then get an email letting you know that the customer finished that transaction. So more information on that, we can do a much deeper dive if we do a one-on-one demo. So again, I encourage you just to sign up to do a one-on-one demo, and I'm sure there'll be information at the end of this webinar with how to do that. So what you're looking at now is the document, and actually I'm going to just back out of that again and just show you how fast it happens. When I hit this next button, the app looks at the 4 forms that I created, filled out, and then calculates how many pages I need and how much space I need for each line item to be printed on that page. So think of it as an accordion, like it's expanding and contracting. No real 2 documents are going to be the same. So if my additional details fits perfect, my photos fits perfect, my disclosure, it fits perfect in the box. There's really no empty space on this thing. So this is my roofing. Here's my sketch. Here is my siding. Here is my windows. Notice, I only added 2 windows in this demo, 2 line items. If there were more, it would just push all the stuff over to the next page.
Steve, while you're flipping through this, too, I just want to, because I saw a couple questions are coming in about like utilizing Leap in a remote selling type environment, and I just want to show like what you're doing right now is the exact same thing that somebody would do, a contractor would do to sell remotely, right? I mean, you're flipping through this on your iPad, connecting to a in this case, we're on a Gotowebinar, but it could be a Zoom, it could be a WebEx, it could be Google Hangout, it could be any of those. And the way you're flipping through there, you're reviewing a contract digitally or virtually could be with a homeowner, right? So yeah, I just want to make sure people are clear on that.
Exactly. So yeah, the only challenge with that will be, well, how does the customer sign it? And we have a solution for that too. So as I scroll through this, I have full color pictures. These were imported from Hover. And then when I tap the screen, I just hit sign. And you have 2 options. You can either do a live signature. So if I'm the sales rep, I'm obviously going to sign it because I'm right here with my iPad and I can just do that. If I'm selling remote, or maybe I have it, like let's fast forward 12 months. I don't know how long this virus thing's going to last, but hopefully it's not 12 months. Fast forward 12 months, we're back in the home selling. Customer calls and say they want to change the color, or they want to add this widget, and you don't want to drive all the way back out to the house to get a document signed for that. I could just select the DocuSign button, put their email address in, and send them a document to sign via their email. This also comes in handy when you have a one-legged lead. I think everybody in the industry knows that term, but you have a one-legged lead where, hey, the wife says, okay, yes, she's ready to do it, and I'm in person with her, but the husband's at work. I could have the wife go ahead and sign with her finger because I'm there with her, but then I could have the husband DocuSign it and send it to him via DocuSign. What's really nice about this is we have completed the integrations in a sense that once it's out of Leap and it's sent to them and it's kind of in the DocuSign ecosystem, once they complete it in the DocuSign ecosystem, we have made it so that DocuSign will dump it back off to us, and then we complete the process with sending it back to the home office or uploading it to a CRM, so that when you could send the contract out, say on a Friday, come back Monday morning, and the customer had already signed it and it's uploaded into the CRM. So I just go through and sign all these. Actually, I'm going to cancel just for time's sake, but it will fill in all the signatures. There's also spots to initial. So if I don't even have to look at it. You know, we had so many times sales reps would turn in contracts, especially a multi-project contract that had a bunch of pages, and then, you know, the project manager would go through it just to, you know, QA the contracts, and of course the sales rep forgot, you know, pages 2 and 3 had initial captures on it. It's happened to me. I had to drive all the way back out to their house because he was a stickler and he would not let the contract go through production until the customer initialed everything. So this makes it impossible for the sales rep to send out a contract without all the initials filled out and without all the signatures also filled out. You just initial like that, and you'll see they'll get printed in on that little bottom piece right there. So once that gets all sent out, there is one kind of like final step in the selling process, and that is to disposition the lead. At this point, everybody, the customer has all the information they need. They have their contract. Home office has the contract as well. It's already uploaded to the CRM. I have myself blind carbon copied, say, in the contract, so I have it for me as a sales rep, but now I need to communicate back to the home office what happened to the appointment. A lot of times this consists of updating a CRM. Sometimes companies use a text message or an email that is sent into the home office. So Leap has all this built in as well, and most of the information that you need on the result is already entered into the application. We already know that a contract was sent. We already know that it was the sale amount. We already know, the finance option that was selected, et cetera, the products that were selected. So when I go into results and result this lead, I can result this as a no sale or a sale. So I'm going to result this one as a sale. I'll put the finance approved. You see it filled in all the other details, total sale amount, how much the par, of course, my commission, I had to bring that thing over. And this one's going to be customers on vacation the 7th through the 14th. Then I just hit save. And this will send a measure sheet, which I'll show you in a second, but it also uploaded the hover. So that kind of like completes the process with the hover, because I not only used it for the measurements, I also used it all the pictures for part of my contract. I used the report for part of my presentation. And now when it comes to ordering the job, the report will be uploaded into the CRM or emailed back to the home office. So then I can use that report to go ahead and order the products based off of the measurements that are on it. And so what I wanted to show you is one more form that's kind of hidden. This will get uploaded on every single lead. And this is kind of the measure sheet that the sales rep had filled out. When I was a sales rep, I had measure sheets on my clipboard. I didn't have any names on them or anything. It was just a chicken scratch sheet. And even if I went back even a week later and tried to figure out how I came up with those numbers, I couldn't interpret the chicken scratch that I wrote on that thing when I was walking around the house to measure. So this allowed me to kind of go back, and it was a snapshot in history of how I came up with the price that I sold the job at. And then if I didn't sell it, it was a snapshot on how I came, the last price I left and how I came up with that price that I left. We have companies who are using this for rehash and are killing it, because now you have everything you need to pitch the lead over the phone and remote. You have all the measurements, you have all the photos. We linked all the hover photos. Any photos that the sales rep had taken when he was out there will also get added, kind of like these here at the end. And then I have all the objection reasons based off the notes that the sales rep typed in at the end of the appointment. So now I could use this to call the customer and say, hey, I've seen, such and such is out here on such and such date, and here's why you didn't buy, and blah, blah, blah. Just so happens we're running this promotion, and I can give them an accurate quote by going off of the last sales rep's measurements without having to schedule another appointment. They'll have Mr. and Mrs. Jones sit out there again and go through that whole entire process. So you can basically discount your margins a little bit, because you don't have to go through that whole entire process again and still make the same amount of money.
Steve, this is great. I know there's so much more we can show. Yeah. There's a ton of questions flowing in, and so I want to make sure we answer some of them. But Heather, I also want to just ask you, given this current situation, I know business hasn't stopped, so I'd like to, maybe you can just share with us how they're utilizing Leap in this environment that we find ourselves in.
Oh, I think you're muted.
I might have you.
Sorry,
might be muted.
I mute a phone call. So for starters, I mentioned this, this group that that the CEO was involved with, and a peer group, and he got off a call, I would say 4 weeks ago, and he came to me and he said, Heather, we are so far behind on this whole virtual thing. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I just feel like they're all talking about, they know what they're going to be doing. And I said, we actually are way ahead. And he said, how can you say that? And I said, because we have Leap. And it was just one of those things where, you know, even though when we bought Leap, it was never really thought of as a virtual tool because we always are going to be in-house, it gave us that platform. It was instant that we had a platform already built for a virtual sale. And so how we're using it real world is, you know, with a combination of Zoom and we go into the resource library in Leap, we can actually show all the products right there. Yeah, thank you, whoever my Vanna is. And like Steve mentioned earlier, we have you can take all these PDFs and rip out the pages you don't need. You can also tab so that, let's say for James Hardy, I can go straight to a Color Plus page, straight to a Cedar Mill page, straight to a Smooth, straight to color options, so that instead of flipping in, you know, virtually a catalog, it almost looks like it's more like a sell sheet now, because I go straight to the information that they need. So that's how we're showing product. And then we also have a new way of showing our corporate presentation that you could also have embedded in Leap. Pull that up, show your corporate story. And then we go through the contract right there in front. We can quote it. And while they're waiting on us to pull the contracts together, and you saw how quickly that happens, we can actually have a before and after reel running so that they're, you know, they can see that while we're going through building the contract. Then we share our screen again, go through that contract, and like Steve said, yeah, you can't do digital signatures, but you sure can do DocuSign. So at that moment, we can get some agreement, send them the contracts, and it can then be signed and all done virtually. And especially if you're using Hover for your measurements, you can actually engage your homeowners to take some of those pictures for you. We're not doing that, but you can, and then you're not even having to go out and do a measurement if they really are concerned about anybody being at their home. So yeah, so we actually now went from being afraid that we were flat-footed to feeling now that, yeah, we actually are ahead of the game on this thing. And our reps have been, it rolled out a week ago that they're doing full virtual presentations, with Leap being really the foundation of that.
That's great, Heather. Really appreciate that. Steve, I'm gonna fire off some questions to you, kind of rapid style here.
All right.
I think you can take these ones as I send them to them. First one: do you need internet access?
For some things you need internet access, but to do the so some things would be like the pull in a Hover. You need to connect to the internet to submit a credit application. You need an internet connection. But to generate an estimate, to put in all your measurements, turn that into a proposal or a contract, and even send it, whether you're doing it through DocuSign or you're live signing it, you can send all of that all without an internet connection, and the app will just hold on to it. Next time it connects to the internet, it will upload everything where it needs to go. So some features, very few features, you need an internet connection. 95% of the app you do not.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's important too, like all those resources you're showing, those brochures and stuff, all that's preloaded in there. And I think you already touched on it, but the nice thing is from corporate, you know, if for their head office, home office, if they need to update those information, they can push it out and everybody's now got it on their iPad. So they're up to speed. There were a couple questions about relative to importing measurements. So I know you mentioned Hover. They saw, you know, the Eagle View logos there. We integrate with them. There was a couple questions relative to like architecture plans, Xactimate, and some of those things. So maybe if you want to touch on the way that measure sheet works and the ability to, you know, input them by hand and stuff like that.
Yeah, so you can, we integrate with EagleView and Hover currently. We do have on our development roadmap, there are a ton of these like measure tools that are springing up. So we've been bombarded with requests to do it. I do think we're going to have at least one, if not two more by the end of this year that will be in here to measure, you know, exterior remodeling. Things like Xactimate, we do not integrate with them, but you can just type in the measurements, right? Just type them in manually. And if you wanted to generate a PDF, like we have a lot of companies who do like insurance, and they would get things from the insurance adjuster that they want to include as part of the document, or at least they want to include things that go to the insurance adjuster as part of their contract, but it's not necessarily generated in Leap. We have, when I go to this contracts And when I'm selecting my templates, I could click this little plus sign, and this will bring up all my files that are on the iPad. So like I could airdrop a file to myself or email it to myself or whatever, and then pull that document up inside of here and then have that part of my contract.
Yeah, awesome.
That
Thanks.
answers the question.
I hope so. If not, we'll follow up for sure.
Right.
Heather, got a question for you that came in. Will you be making the virtual selling experience a standard practice post this COVID-19?
Great question. You know, we talk about that often. There's certainly going to be a market for that. Now, in-home selling is really still, we find what a lot of people still want. They want us to come out. They want us to be able to have that discussion in home, especially when you get on the design side of it. However, the millennial market is definitely going to be more about technology. You don't need to come to my house, just give me a quote, that type of so we're prepared for that for sure. So we see ourselves offering still both. For COVID-19, this is clearly what we need to be doing right now. Beyond COVID, it would be an option for sure. And we're just glad that we were forced into it so that we now have something that we said one day we're going to have to be able to do this.
Awesome. I know we're right up against 3 o'clock, and I just want to be conscious of everyone's time. So, Steve, thank you. Heather, thank you. Kelly, appreciate it. We won't bother switching back to the slideshow, but just want to tell everybody thank you. And there are probably still a dozen or so questions in the queue, so we'll be sure to respond to each of you with the answers. But appreciate you joining us, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, guys.